ArTechník podcast number 22 for August 19th, 2012. Okay.
We're on.
Hey, we're here.
Well, some of us are here.
It depends on here.
Yeah.
What you define as here.
I think very soon, I think very soon in the future, digital presence will count as here.
Like run for digital Congress?
Well, maybe, but I
The
think
House of Avatar Representatives?
yes.
That will fit very
think-
well into my old curmudgeon isolationist lifestyle. I could still run for things, but live in my cabin out in the woods.
Well, you would need some sort of recording device to send your avatar out there.
Well, sure. That's what this is, I think, the transition before I've completely gone out of my mind. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm more and more on your side with this.
Well, cool.
The more your business depends on technology, the less you want to be a part of it.
Sometimes.
I can see that.
Or like I want it to be work, and then when work is done, I want to do not technology, like go to the park.
Oh, the park. Well, thank goodness we have people who don't want to recreate without technology, or nobody would listen to a podcast.
We could podcast in the park,
We could.
live, out loud, to the joggers.
At the joggers.
Yeah.
You know, most of them won't hear us because they usually have headphones on and are listening
always
to our
to our
podcast.
We're confident today.
Yeah. Cool. So what kind of week is everybody having?
I've had a great week.
Yeah.
I had a sudden, unexpected interview with a new job company audition, and I got a role, and I'm going to be going out of town for 5 weeks to do a production.
Hooray.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
You're coming here, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to Columbus to do a show at the Springer Opera House with Jeff Holbrook.
Cool beans.
Yeah.
Jeff's looking forward to that.
Yeah, I need to get you a bed.
Well, you have a bed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the living room,
Well,
in the dining room. Actually.
you've got several bed options, just none that are available or being able to be given to Aaron.
See, I run a halfway house for people who are
Artist
coming
in
off of
transition.
technology.
Oh.
That's why Adam's over all the time. Or people who are going into technology. Either one, I guess.
In and out.
I feel like we would both be the mothers of this halfway house.
I think that would work.
Coming in and out of their stages of...
Yeah. Blue pill or red pill?
I never remember which one does what.
I don't remember either. I haven't seen those movies in forever.
They've been 10 years.
Oh.
Shut your mouth.
No, seriously.
Only 10 years now. Sorry, when you're as timeless as I am.
Well,
Artfully crafted.
yeah, Adam and I, and Ben actually have just... You explain it, Adam. We just shot a...
Okay. Yesterday we shot some footage for the CFC, which remind me what that stands for again?
Combined Federal Campaign.
Combined Federal Campaign, and that is sort of a blanket organization that includes a lot of others like United Way, Wounded Warrior, things like that. And they wanted to do a 4-5 minute video that kind of just highlighted some people that have been helped by those various programs. And so our contact, Laura, she coordinated a couple of families and individuals that have been touched by the various organizations. And so Jeff and Ben and I went in yesterday and we recorded some of those interviews. And it was really fantastic just to listen to these people talk.
Mm-hmm. We had a couple of wounded soldiers, and they were sort of talking about how the programs were helping sort of for them to find get a certain portion of their life back. They would go out hunting, and it's interesting to me because they made a big point. They said, going out and hunting is very different than going out to combat, even though you think about where there could be some overlaps. They said it's very different. It's very serene. He was saying that sort of, I think, for the benefit of some of the other soldiers, which I thought was cool.
And the thing that impressed me the most, too, with all the individuals is they talked about, Laura would ask them, said, so what, did you have to pay to be involved with these? Did you have to, reimburse these organizations in any way? And all of them said across the board, no. And the thing is, these individuals wanted so much to pay back even any one little bit. And so what they ended up doing was so many of them pay it back by volunteering. There was one woman that talked about how her family was greatly helped by Columbus Hospice. And they provided everything. It was for her father who was dying. And they provided everything for the family. They didn't have to pay anything. And I think she said this was like 10, maybe 12 years ago now. And but because she was so moved and helped by the organization, now she volunteers her own time as well as is involved with helping them, secure money and funds so that they can keep doing the projects they do.
Yeah, it was just really nice to talk to everyone and to just take on a project with people that we don't even remotely know, or a world that I don't think we normally associate in. We've lost Aaron in the Google Hangout.
How do I need to do this? Hit the...
Oh, we're going to pause the recording.
Okay.
Okay, we're back. We got Aaron back. Anyway, to continue, it was just cool to work in a project with people that we don't know in a worldview that I don't have much experience in. I think Ben had some insight sort of into that world, but I mean, we spend most of our time in, the arts and civilian life and things like that, and it was, I don't know, it was kind of inspiring and just kind of, not dramatically, but eye-opening in a like nice kind of, kind of way.
Yeah, I agree.
So that was cool. I've been asked to come back to Write Club.
Yes.
I'll be teaching... the subject this time around, the major this time around will be fairy tales, and my subject will be damsels in distress.
Oh.
And that's going to be Wednesday at Push Push, so I'm excited about that. And I'll be with Aaron in the show Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing at Springer, so that's going to be cool. And I don't know, other stuff. We're doing lots of other stuff, but who cares?
Yeah. Who cares? You're here to listen to us talk about technology and art and mashup.
Yes. And why do people want to get on machines that could kill them?
Well,
that's where my brain is right now. I think I've found my stance on this today's topic.
Cool. What is our topic for today?
Our theme, if you will.
We decided on amusement parks, right?
Amusement parks, theme parks, yeah.
Theme parks and amusement parks,
Yeah.
which is, Aaron, you used to work in Orlando, and I used to live there. I never worked the parks, but I lived there, and I had lots of friends that did. And Adam, I can't remember. Have you done any?
I have not, no.
Right.
But I know a lot of people that have. So there.
Me as someone that likes them, though, that would maybe like. Do you like roller coasters?
I do, although it was but I didn't for a long time. It wasn't. I think it was in 9th grade, and it was actually at the amusement park that I was at 2 weeks ago with my brother, Busch Gardens in Virginia. That was actually the first park that I ever went on roller coasters on. It was what was the name of it? It was called. It's not there anymore because I remember looking for it, but it was called the Wolf or something, and it was one of those bucket style coasters where the bucket is attached by the top, and so it's allowed to swing left to right, so the momentum as you whip around those curves will sling you out, and so sometimes your car would be like perpendicular with the ground, or parallel with the ground, yeah.
No, thank you. No.
But yeah, that one doesn't exist anymore, but...
You are not a roller coaster person, eh, Jeff?
I have one roller coaster that I've ever liked, and it was the Superman at Six Flags. My favorite. I loved it.
The one in Atlanta that
yeah,
puts you.
You're looking down at the ground the whole time, and the track is basically on your spine.
Yeah.
I liked that one.
That was a cool, yeah.
But I mean, I like some of the smaller carny kind of rides, but I generally don't like roller coasters. It's less the ride I'm discovering, and it's more I don't like not being able to say scratch my nose when I'm all bound up and I'm waiting for the thing to take off. I don't like any of the restraints. I do not like those at all.
So you'd rather ride the coaster without the restraints?
Sure. And then, I'll only not like them once. And I don't like the ones where see, I'm a terrible roller coaster customer because I don't like it where it's so restrained that I can't do anything. But see, like with Superman, I was up, but I could like scratch my nose and stuff if I had an itch, and I could wiggle around a little bit because of the way that the restraints were designed.
Yeah.
But in the other ones, like where they're cars and you've just got the one belt, I never feel like, or a bar rather, I feel like I'm going to flip over that bar, so I don't like that because it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Superman maybe is my one.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. That's cool. That's
A lot of
go ahead.
Let me tell
I was
the
gonna say-
whole list of my fears.
a lot of the parks now, for different reasons, but this might be a benefit to you. You know, they put a sample of the car out in front of the ride so that you can make sure you can fit into it comfortably. So you can find out if you can scratch your nose and whether or not you'll like the rides or not.
Yeah. My big thing with the roller coasters is I absolutely love them once they're in motion, but it's that slow ascent as they pulls your car up that first hill. I have to keep my eyes closed for that completely. And once
Really?
I'm just terrified of that slow going up. But as soon as I feel the gravity take over and that first hill happen, I open my eyes and I'm absolutely fine. But I just absolutely cannot stand that slow ascent.
We actually have a friend who shall remain nameless who has a thing in his brain where his doctor said, nope, you can never ride roller coasters because if you shake that loose, that could kill you. So there you go. Person also has, I think, possible retina problems. So yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, my largely what I brought to the table was actually roller coasters. Surprise! Yeah, I kind of was looking up the history of roller coasters, and it was kind of interesting. They said their origin can be traced back to Russia. Yeah, and Russia. You like that?
We will put you in these steel contraptions of death, and we will ride you in circles. In communist Russia, roller coaster rides you.
Before they had the cycles,
Yes.
they had it was one giant ice slide.
Ice slide,
Ice
Boris?
slide, yes. And so it was basically a giant slide made of ice. And they said they would put people in these toboggans, or sometimes they would make sleds out of ice. Yeah, and they would put people in it and basically send them down the hill. And that basically, you've got ice on ice, which is quite dangerous. And so the early ones, people had to steer them themselves. They would often put a hole in the bottom of it for like a crude brake or some way like a strap so that you could steer it. And so they said on the early versions of it, they would often have at the top of the hill professionals that would offer to drive your little toboggan for you. And so you could pay them or tip them, and then you could be reasonably safe going down this hill made of ice and potentially a contraption made of ice.
Well, what else is there to do in Russia?
Right. And so that was sort of the beginning of it. And then the sort of next step was how can we build one of these that lasts all year? And there's debate. There's some evidence that said Catherine the Great apparently had one built, commissioned one to be built on her property. But then there's some other people that think the French actually came up with this, where they took the slide but made it out of wood and polished it up with wax, and then built a little wooden toboggan. They put wheels or ball bearings on the bottom of it and slide that down the wooden hill.
And that's where they got the inspiration for Tetris, because at the bottom of a hill, it was basically a straight line, and as all the sleds and dead bodies just sort of started piling in together, they made these interesting shapes.
Yeah. Stop us, Aaron. Stop us. You're the only one.
So when did the up and down increase, the whole pattern of a roller coaster develop?
That was the French. Once the French
It
again.
is not enough for it to go down the hill. She must go up.
So they actually started to refine it and put it on a track, as well as they were the first ones to attempt to put a loop in it. Anyone want to take a guess as to how early, like year-wise, they made their first attempt to put a loop
Well, remind me
into
when
the
Russia
coaster?
was, and then I'll hazard my guess.
Russia, they were doing it as far back as the 1500s.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
I will say 1603.
Okay. I'm looking at you, Aaron.
Don't do that.
1670.
1670. No. It was actually in 1898. Yeah.
Closest without going over was Aaron.
Ding, 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 ding.
By Price's
But-
Right.
You're our showcase winner. But so basically, when they made the first loop, it was basically it was a circle, and it was called the flip flap, and it was an actual circle. And the problem they had was when they first made it was because it was a circle and not that sort of oval loop that you see in coasters now. It would actually hurt, like give people whiplash, because when it would hit the beginning of that curve and immediately start to spin around, it was too sudden a change in trajectory, and people were having major problems. And so they shut it down, and they even talked about how they extensively tested it first by weighting it down with sandbags, and then they tested it on a monkey.
I knew a monkey was going to get into this.
And then finally the first human test subject, who was quoted afterwards as saying, "That was a weird experience, but I want to do it again."
Sounds like a every roller coaster.
Yeah, he couldn't. So, but
Imagine the monkey coming out, like, grabbing his neck, like,
yeah, and so once they fixed that design and started to make it more that sort of oval loop that we're more accustomed to seeing on coasters, they became more popular, and more loops were in coasters.
Once they
and
stopped
stuff.
hurting as much.
Right. But the first, I just could talk all day about the history of these things, so just stop me whenever you're bored. For real, make a sign, hold up that filter again.
I don't know. My whole
Yeah.
thing keeps coming back to, and I know we're not just talking about roller coasters when we're talking about amusement parks, because there's a lot of design and stuff that goes into it. But I do keep coming back to roller coasters, and I do just keep coming back to why the hell? Why do you want to do these things? Why? I just don't like them.
Yeah, and I think that was my biggest thing growing up, is like I didn't watch scary movies.
Me
I didn't ride roller coasters. I didn't do anything that was even remotely thrill seeking.
I'm brave.
Well,
I do see the appeal. I mean, it's a burst of adrenaline. It's a controlled chaos.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting to live through it, you know? I mean, you know you're going to on one level, but you get up there and you hear the chain rattling, or the magnets kick in and lock and kick you off down the track, and you know you're going to live through it, but
yeah,
it's gratifying when you do.
yeah.
I mean, you don't know with 100% certainty that
I
you will
always
live
come
through
back
it.
to
There
the really tired maintenance guy who just came into work after having a fight with his wife, who didn't get any sleep last night, and is like checking the machines.
Yeah.
Well, that's why little tiny carnival rides, which are like 5 feet from the ground, scare me way more than theme park rides, 100 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Because they've got a team and they've got, money, and they have to have a reputation. They're going to be in the same place next week that they are this week. So if something does happen, they're held accountable. I mean, I'm sure carnivals are held accountable too, but
to some extent. But that is one of the things that terrified me. I did some, I did some carnival rides when I was younger, and but as I got older, I think it was right about middle school or so, I stopped riding them because I started to become very aware that we always had, what was it? The Shriners had a great big sort of fall carnival in our hometown in October, and one of the traveling sort of carnival ride midway things would always set up shop there. I started to become aware that they would basically hire local people and pay them a really, really cheap low wage to help assemble all of these rides. And so it was basically like, you know, people that were looking to make some quick cash. So you got to think there's probably some alcoholics, like just not the people you want to be assembling a ride that's going to spin you around at 70 miles an hour, you know? And so I started steering away of carnival rides after that.
Go.
I was also saying, you know, one of the things that I sort of researched this week was what I apparently is known as the barf circuit, which is these, you know, roadside attraction rides, and the design effort to them is different, and it's had its own sort of progression from what, like Adam was talking about with the mainstay roller coasters. You know, because they also have to incorporate things into their design, like it has to be able to pack itself up into a truck-sized unit. It has to be able to set up on different areas, you know, different grounds, different level issues. And so it talks about how the first ones were sort of a central spine and arms and a very, you know, the Highland swing kind of style, where it's the chains and the swings that spin around, and then it started developing ways where cars could go with it, and how to get the most thrill and attraction out of a very simple mechanic that repeats, rather than on a mainstay roller coaster where generally the thrill is the change as you proceed down the track. You know, this time now you're in a corkscrew, but you're going into a loop-de-loop. And so what I've discovered is, in my personal, you know, I went on to a fairground like for the first time fairly recently, and I love roller coasters, I love big action rides and stuff, but these little tiny amusement park rides were just killing me because the speed of the repetition, the short radius of the spins just threw off my inner ear, and I was sick by like the third ride, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. Whereas on the big coasters I can go all day and have, you know, no real motion sickness to speak of.
I was thinking a minute ago about when I remember going to Disney and things, and I remember seeing the way that, say, Disney in Orlando is laid out eyeline wise. And Aaron, I think you might have some interesting things to say about this, where you can see elements of the other worlds in the distance, but you're pretty thoroughly contained in your world until you turn the corner. And in each habitat, there's sort of rules of scale and rules of what characters get to be there, and things like that, which I think is helpful for people like me, who I find sometimes the scale of the characters, the people in the suits, you know, it's off-putting to me in some ways, you know. But I think you and I were kind of arguing about this the other day, actually. About
the characters specifically?
Yeah, but really, we should probably talk about the eye lines and stuff like that.
Oh, I love theming. I mean, I much prefer a theme park to an amusement park, and the distinction is fairly vague. But, you know, I think creating that artificial environment, that augmented reality, basically. I mean, you look at Disney, which is the one I know the most about, Walt Disney World, Florida. And the entire thing is a virtual reality experience. From the minute you are on their property, they are controlling everything in subtle design ways that you just don't expect and perceive while you're there on the property. I mean, all of Magic Kingdom Park is on the second floor. You are brought up gradually from about a mile away from the park to the second floor. So the outdoor roads are all a floor up. that you can't tell while you're in the park because the whole scale is that setting. But all of the mechanics and stuff are one floor down, and it's not sunk so much as the rest of the park is built up. So things like that, just the themes overall, yeah. But like one of the examples of eye lines is the top of the Enchanted Tiki Room is in Adventureland, which is a very much African-themed environment. But the top of the Tiki Room, which is sort of this ziggurat, almost tower into the air, is viewable from behind the other set of buildings in Frontierland, which is American Western themed. So the design, there are these 4 animals at the top of the Tiki Room roof, which are a very specific type of gazelle with these very long, straight antlers that have sort of a tip out at the end. So when you're in Africa, they look very much like gazelle. But when you're in Frontierland and thinking about the West and you look up, they look like longhorn cattle. And so when they go through and detail it that much, Islands of Adventure also does a fantastic job of theming itself out. Universal Studios has sort of this ambiguous movie studio theme. So a lot of the themes are backlot environments, like we're on the New York street, but because it's also a backlot, the theme intentionally stops at a certain point and you see the backstaginess of the backlot. And that doesn't capture me as much as when you're walking around Islands of Adventure and you are completely surrounded by oddly shaped palm trees on Dr. Seuss Island that they have flown in and replanted from hurricane hit areas. So these actual palm trees that are twisted and distorted and growing in corkscrews and bent over at 90-degree angles halfway up their trunk, all actual naturally occurring palm trees that they have unified into Dr. Seuss Island, and just adds to this environment of everything here is askew.
That's got to be an awkward job. You know, I'm the guy that flies in after your natural disaster and scouts your tree wreckage.
Oh.
If it helps you rebuild, it's probably a nice get.
I'm sure the money's good. Sure, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Way to take that thing I said and make it nice again. Good job.
Oh. And that's really what I actually wanted to talk about specifically, is the theming and the change of attractions over the last few years. More and more of them are becoming integrated 2D, 3D, virtual, hybrid environments. And I was trying to think of which one I wanted to talk about and what new theme park technology was around the corner and was going to change everything. And there's some great stuff. There are motion simulator rides where you design your own track and then you get to ride your own roller coaster. And there are interactive computer-generated art pieces at theme parks now. But the one that I kept coming back to, the one I want to talk about is Haunted Mansion, which has some of the lowest tech in the park.
No,
but
they've got good tech. I mean, that it's endured, and the mirror tricks alone.
Yeah. So, spoiler alert, I am now going to talk about my favorite things in the Haunted Mansion, which will ruin the magic. But I'm amazed by the Haunted Mansion every single time because it feels real in a way that watching the Spider-Man ride, which is 3D and very impressive and energetic and exciting, but you know you're watching a 3D cartoon. And in the same way where you go back and you watch the original Star Wars series and have to really wrap your head around that all of those things existed in some form, versus watching the modern Star Wars series where it's a great artist drew that and now it looks like that and okay, moving on. The Haunted Mansion continues to impress me because a lot of its primary illusions are not even Disney innovations so much as 17th century theater effects
I remember
utilized in sharp precision. Yeah.
I remember the last time I went there, I guess when I was 11 or so, the coolest thing I remember about the Haunted Mansion was the singing busts.
Yeah.
The heads that you pass in the graveyard, because I mean it's just so simple. It was just a bust with sort of a homogenized sort of features on the bust, but then they project this singing face on top of it, and it was just so cool but so simple, and I just always remember that.
One of those has changed a little bit, right? Like there's one special one or something at the entrance that you told me about?
Well, there's that whole illusion. That one is something that was developed by the Disney group, and that's the Leota effect. And it was originally designed for the crystal ball, the fortune teller in the crystal ball, who became known as Madame Leota because the voice actor and the face performer, her name was Leota, and so the character became Madame Leota. And so the Leota effect, which was originally film projection on these amorphous busts, it baffled people how they got this moving human head completely contained inside the crystal ball. And then the busts, once they had the effect, they used it out in the graveyard to great effect as well. But what's changed is now Madame Leota actually hovers about 3 feet above the table. So not only is she totally self-contained, but there's nothing obvious touching her. And so they've choreographed the projector to follow the movement of the crystal ball. So it still works the same way, but it's even less obvious, because everybody assumed it was animatronics, which would need a whole processor and the pistons and everything underneath or behind. So to contain it all in the crystal ball was a complete change.
We're going to lay bare all of Disney's 17th century secrets.
Well, it's about time. There's only so much time span that a spoiler alert is valid, In the 18th century, I never would have spoken out about how this effects was done.
They've had a good run. I mean, 1955 is when Disneyland opened, so that's 60 years or so?
And it was open very shortly after the park, but not immediately.
Yeah.
It was not one of the original attractions, but it was a very quick attraction afterwards, within a year or two, I think. I'm speaking out of my memory at that point.
Keep going down this Haunted Mansion rabbit hole, because there's a lot of stuff in there.
So the vehicles were one of the developments of the park as well, and they're known as the Omni-Movers. And they're actually, you're sitting sort of on a bench on a pole connected to a motor so that it can turn the car completely around, tilt it up, down, left, right, spin it around, lean it. And one of its primary objectives originally, it comes way down over your peripheral vision, so you're really directed on where you're looking. Because a lot of the early attractions, because they were three-dimensional and environmental, they were trying to tell a narrative the way they knew how, which was presenting a film. So they were used to being able to control where you look when, and so they developed this shape of this car to come in and around your peripheral vision so that it really directs your eye like a camera. And so they move on a continuous track throughout the attraction. Then the one that always just amazed me as a kid, I mean, I think the busts and Madame Leota were fun as a kid, but I didn't know enough to be amazed at the time. Like, I was just like, oh yes, there's a thing that's, of course it can talk, why not? But the ballroom. The ballroom has the semi-transparent people dancing and moving throughout the environment, appearing, disappearing, and it's very simple, but elegant, and it is, as we've talked about before, the Pepper's Ghost effect, which is a slanted piece of glass, and you're actually seeing the semi-transparent reflection of characters underneath your car and above your car, through this semi-transparent glass. And when they opened the attraction, they brought illusionists and special effects artists through the first couple of weeks to see, is our stuff totally obvious? Are they going to get it immediately? They figured out a lot of the attraction, but one of the things they weren't able to figure out was the ballroom, because they kept saying, well, it can't be Pepper because you would need this giant, like, football field size sheet of glass. And how would you get it in here? And they actually have one solid sheet of glass that covers the entire ballroom that they build each mansion around every time they install the attraction somewhere new.
Huh. You must get in trouble if you break it.
Oh, wow. Your job to, like, polish it after
I would
hours.
imagine so.
Yeah. That's interesting. There was something I came across, speaking of Disney. There was a guy, I'm looking for his name now, Marty Sklar, who was apparently the head of Disney Imagineers for quite some time. And he, in a couple of talks years ago, apparently distilled sort of the Imagineer work ethic into sort of a 10-point code that they kind of follow whenever they're designing new attractions and rides. And so I have those 10 right here.
I'd love to hear them, actually.
Here we go. Your top 10. That's what I'm shaking the paper. Can we hear that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Number 1. I'm going to go back. Yeah. Know your audience. First one was know your audience. Don't bore people. Don't talk down to them. Don't assume they know anything. Give them everything they need to be immersed in this experience. Number 2, wear your guest shoes. Insist that the designers, the staff, and your board members experience your facility as the visitors as often as possible. Yep. Number 3, organize the flow of people and ideas. Use good storytelling techniques. Tell good stories, not lectures.
I like it. I like it.
Number 4, let's see here. Oh, goodness, it kind of butchered the font a little bit. But this sounds like something else. Yeah, sorry. It did. It put all these weird foreign symbols in there. There's that one right there. Yeah. Basically, it's talking about what you were talking about earlier, and some other explanations. I heard them referred to as weenies by the Imagineers. Basically, some focal point that's going to draw you into the next area. So, like the top of the tiki room would be, you can see, they referred to it as a weenie.
Because everyone's going to look if there's a weenie in it?
I can't remember. There was an explanation as to why. It was an abbreviation for some other term, but it was essentially what's going to draw your focus to that next area. A weenie. A weenie will draw your focus. Number 5, communicate with visual literacy. Make use of all nonverbal ways of communication. Color, shape, form, texture. Number 6, avoid overload. Resist the temptation to tell too much and have too many objects. Don't force people to swallow more than they can digest. Try to stimulate and provide guidance to those that want more. Number 7.
Like Guinan.
Like Guinan. Number 7, I think this is the big one that drew me. Tell one story at a time. If you have a lot of information, divide it into distinct, logical, organized stories. Yeah. Number 8, avoid contradictions. Clear institutional identity helps give you a competitive edge. Number 9, for every ounce of treatment, provide tons of fun. There you go. And number 10, keep it up. Never underestimate the importance of cleanliness and routine maintenance. People expect to get a good show every time. They will comment more on broken and dirty stuff than they will on the positive things.
They will. My phrase is, if I go into Disney and something is not as par as it could be, I say, I paid for magic. Number 8 reminds me of that was avoid contradiction.
Avoid contradiction.
That reminds me of sort of an intro philosophy into niche marketing. Yeah. So yeah, Disney. You think of Disney. Disney is Disney. Disney's very good at being Disney. Now, to be fair, Disney does a lot of interesting other things like ABC and ESPN, right? But Disney doesn't mention much about its relationship about owning ESPN and stuff like that. But
inside the parks, even
Disney.
Yeah.
Inside the parks, even, and it's part of our training. It's like if you're in operations or attractions, you have a very specific uniform for that building.
Right.
And we have basically secret tunnels so that somebody isn't walking across Fantasyland in a spacesuit to try and get to their location. They go down through the tunnels underneath the park and appear exactly where they're supposed to.
Is there an
rather
unfinished tunnel somewhere in like a race of lost Disney Morlock employees who now have their own like societal structure and, you know?
Not that I can talk about publicly.
Okay, talk to me after. I'm looking for a vacation destination.
Yeah, but you're right. If you think about the way the different lands in Disney are separated, even, I mean, that goes back to what you were talking about, niche marketing, and how you create a complete story and a complete idea in that one land. And if, you know, you're
Where do I like to go? Tomorrowland.
Tomorrowland, yeah.
That was another article, the Tomorrowland problems. The fact that as soon as you create Tomorrowland, it's basically out of date.
Yeah.
And what the other way to approach a scientific exploration park is to almost look specifically at the past and focus on science and development rather than what the future might hold.
Oh, yeah. I still think the Carousel of Progress is fun to watch. Isn't that what it's called?
Yes,
Carousel of Progress?
and it basically is now. For many years, it was the Carousel of History, but and it was the last room
Yeah.
that was supposedly in the future. And in the future, televisions might be in color, and you would be able to sit across the room while watching them and change the channel.
Everyone's in 80s clothes.
Yeah.
Whereas the other rooms in the carousel were very much a proud recollection of the technology of the time. And so this idea that you could make a scientifically praising theme environment that was not specifically geared on what the future might hold wouldn't go out of date as quickly or as completely.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's true, because, I mean, things are, if nothing else, things are happening so much more faster than they used to. So how can you keep up? Unless
I don't know how the Samsung Apple thing is going to go down.
we don't know how those chips will fall just yet.
Any square rectangles shown in the Carousel of Progress at the end must belong to someone.
Yeah.
Although
So
Steve Jobs was on, well, Steve Jobs and Pixar and Disney and Apple, they're all in bed together. So
in some way, yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing all the cross and tie overs and
There's only like 4 companies in the whole world when you
Essentially.
track them all the way to their top parent tiers.
Yeah.
it's true. It's like there's only one improv game. Yeah.
we're all headed to that Omnicore sort of future in RoboCop, where it was just the one big corporation.
I want my OmniMover chair.
It would simplify some things.
It's interesting because when you're talking about the chairs focusing them in one direction, like you could with a film, I was thinking about what Adam talked about a few weeks ago on the show, where I don't articulate this well, where you take one shot in a film and there's a lot of story happening throughout the shot, and basically the behavior is guiding your focus as a viewer rather than the camera trying to explicitly
So
point
there
out.
will be
Yes.
one scene
Yeah.
where they track the pupil movement.
Right. Where there's less editing and less tracking of the actual shot, but there's blocking and movement happening within the one shot to kind of guide your focus.
Right, and I wonder now if, with park design and stuff like that, if more of the attractions are, to stay immersive, they're going to look everywhere, and I wonder if they're doing similar studies of where are they looking the most, and things like that.
It is interesting, though, even with all that, I'm sure psychology and I don't know, tracking market behavior and things like that are out there. The one thing that drives me the craziest when I'm at an amusement park or a theme park, when you are behind or somehow find yourself in the midst of a group of about 10 or 15 people, and all of them are talking to each other, yet nobody is listening, and they're all looking different directions, and at any given moment, one of them will suddenly change directions, and not be aware that they're about to crash into somebody else that's standing there, and they take up a space that's 15, 20 feet in diameter. And it's just this giant, amorphous blob making its way through the park. And it doesn't get organized until they get in line for something.
I always get bothered when I can see the ceiling, where I see the corner bend from the wall to the ceiling. Like in, this is a good attraction to sight, but Small World, which is not all that immersive per se, but it is. I mean, it's large.
Oh, well, I mean, you can see
older.
the drop ceiling in Small World. I mean, it looks like an office building painted black with little holes cut in it for the drop lines for, the hot air balloon puppets.
Oh, wow. It's been a long time since I've been to Disney World because I don't remember any of that.
I'm seeing a studio trip to Disney.
Well, I tried to push for
podcast live from the park.
I tried to push for this week for a research junket. I don't know. Yeah.
I feel like this topic. I feel like that we're just scratching this one. I feel like there will be a revenge of the theme park episode sometime.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there's a bunch of people I'd like to talk to, but they would need to speak anonymously. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to figure that out. But there's some interesting tricks that are around, and there's some good dirt that we could talk about.
It's amazing. I mean, the crowd control, psychological stuff, the purchase, impulse purchase, psychological control that theme parks have over us, have over their visitors, is fascinating and frightening, and just arguably on this side of evil.
Like those charming foreign young ladies who are selling you candy bars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
just my weakness?
Yeah. Are they selling the candy bars, you said?
Well, that's what they sold me.
Okay.
I didn't see any other options.
Okay. Interesting.
But even where they put employees, they don't hire based on what you look like, but once they hire you, they will place you where you are most psychologically beneficial to the park. So your cashier at a gift shop is generally going to look like a warm, friendly, older woman.
Not the one that sold me that chocolate bar.
Well, no, because she was an impulse sale, not a cashier at one of the big gift shops.
Yeah, you already made your decision when you walked up to her. Yeah.
But the people pushing the merchandise are going to be younger and attractive and interesting.
Right.
What does it say for the people that they put in costumes so that you can't see their face?
I'd like to believe that says they move well.
Okay.
That they can convey lots of emotion and intent strictly physically with their body.
I would agree with that assessment.
You have a mover's face. Let me tell you. You have a face for costume work.
Or podcasting.
Cool. Yeah.
Is that a doily?
He
Oh,
is.
sorry. Forgot there's a
watching.
camera.
Yeah,
We can see you. Yeah. But cool.
I'm going to keep a running tally of how many times you and I say the same thing.
Oh, goodness. Well, I guess I could go back and listen to the podcast and figure it out.
Yeah, that will never happen. That's when I know doomsday is upon us.
Real? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, doomsday is a-coming.
You give Adam a lot of power.
You really do.
Adam will bring forth the apocalypse, but it'll be very organized, and it'll probably be fun to watch for a while before the real screaming starts.
I have learned a lot about all this theme park and amusement park design. I'm going to, keep it orderly. But you're going to have a thrill. Yeah. Yeah.
But what about people like me that don't want to get on the rides?
You don't have a choice.
What do you mean I don't have a choice?
You don't have a choice. Once I'm running things,
Yeah?
I put you in the line and put you in the category where I feel you will be most appropriate. Impulse buys, cashier. computer call help center.
I would go to a theme park run by Adam. I think that would be a fascinating, terrifying experience.
I think it would have a slight theme of murder to it. Welcome to Murderland.
You have a lot of faith in me, Jeff.
There
I
are
wish that
some
slight theme of murder.
strange overall park themes out there. I mean, you
There
start with
are.
Holy Land in Florida, which is bizarre, which is literally Bethlehem and
Go on Vegas.
Yeah.
Big searchlights and
Yeah.
there is a
Is that one still around? Because
Yeah.
it is? Okay. Because I thought that one particular one was attached to somebody that got sent to jail.
it might be, but
That-
the park seems to have
If it
survived.
is, then it was there when I was living there. So, but
I can't remember when
You
he
know,
got
that's
put
been-
away. Yeah, okay.
over a year.
That's just something for me to look up later.
This one, I don't know if it is still running, but there was a Dickensian theme park, which was a gritty, disgusting London environment
Yeah.
where you could meet Fagin or the rat catcher or
Let's do Islands
Oh.
of Adventure Watchmen.
Oof.
instead of Marble Island, Watchman Island.
There'd be a riot every hour on the hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where was? Do you remember where that Dickensian theme park was? It was at. I'm gonna guess Japan. I feel Japan has the
Oh,
most
Japan.
interesting niche amusement parks.
Come on, Japan.
Aaron's looking it up right now.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah.
Clack, clack, clack,
Clack, clack, clack.
There's also, I did just read about a Chinese guy who made his own Transformers theme park with scrap metal sculpture.
Oh.
Is that more of an exhibit?
I guess they called it a theme park.
Theme park. Huh. Be slung around with all these sharp pieces of metal scattered around you. That sounds like fun.
Talk about the thrill of survival.
It probably sound just like the movie.
Oh.
Clang, clang, clang.
Oh, speaking of, you know that Highland sling, you know, the one where it's basically, you know, it spins you around and slings you around on the chains. Aaron was talking
Yeah.
about earlier. The coolest one and scariest one that I was ever on. It was an amusement park called. It was somewhere up in the Ozarks. I want to say it was either Ghost Riders in the Sky or it had Ghost. It was basically an amusement park. They built it on top of a mountain. And so the way that you got there was they had like these old cable cars that would pull you up the side of the mountain. And then it had coasters and like, you know, shows and all those things. But it had this Highland swing that was basically built right on the edge of the mountain. And so when it started spinning and slinging you, it slung you over the side of the mountain and you could see down, I'm going to guess, maybe 500 feet, maybe more. And it was basically a sheer drop before it started to slope out a little bit more. But it was basically slinging you off the side of the mountain. It was terrifying. I only rode it once. My brother rode it several times, but I was like, I did it once just to say I did it, but it scared the crap out of me.
I think Stone Mountain Park should become an alien away team expedition theme park. Since it looks like the surface of an alien world.
Yeah, the idea of building attractions on to other things has started taking prominence. There's several places in Las Vegas where the top of the hotels and things have, you know, roller coasters that swing you out over the edge of the building, and they have to incorporate into the designs all sorts of, yes, the ride can handle this, but that corner of the building will fall off if you do this
And how
instead
will
of.
the guy in 19A sleep?
With all those screams coming
Yeah.
from just above.
Just outside their window.
Yeah, the guy sleeping, you just say like, ah! They come banging out the window. Ah!
I like that.
Ah!
Wow.
Dickens World is in England, Kent.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
Uh-huh.
Wow,
Point for the English.
cool.
Dubai's getting a new
Dubai's getting
Disney-themed Marvel theme park. You know, in the States, Universal Studios has claim of Marvel
Right.
park stuff. but Dubai's getting a Disney Marvel park.
I want to go to Dubai so bad. If I ever just disappear, that is probably where you will find me. CIA, FBI, CNN,
Wow.
ABC, ESPN, both owned by Disney. But I mean, Dubai. I mean, because they've got the Palm Tree Island, custom design island, and the World, which is a bunch of custom design islands that make a Mercator.
They're building the city of the future, basically.
And the architecture there is incredible. I want to go to Dubai so bad.
Yeah.
They are insanely. I mean, the design stuff coming out of Dubai is just. You look at it and you're like, this cannot
To me,
be
it's
real.
inspiring. Like rotating buildings. Well, I think it's about time to get off this roller coaster and do sign-offs. Let's all puke as we come down. So, unless
Man,
Adam
I was about to say, I didn't even get to talk about there was considered the first roller coaster in America.
Yeah.
It was sort of the proto coaster. I'll give it very briefly.
Proto-coaster.
Proto coaster. It was in
Coaster Prime.
It was in Mock Chunk, Pennsylvania, and it was built around a mine. It was actually the cart system that would take the coal that they were pulling out of the mine down to the bottom of the mountain for processing.
Like Donkey Kong.
And it was, speaking of donkeys, that's how they got it. That's how they got the carts up the mountain. They were pulled by donkeys. And then basically they would load them up, and this track was 18 miles long. And they would load it up at the top and then basically give it a little push, and gravity would take it all the way down to the bottom. What happened was they started to figure out it'd be faster rather than walking the donkeys down the mountain, building a special cart for the donkeys that could also ride down the mountain. And then the next step was they were like, well, if you can put donkeys in it, why not put people in it? And so during the day, it was a coal mine, a cart for the coal mine, and at night they would charge people $1 to basically get pulled up the mountain by donkeys in this cart, and then basically let it go down the mountain. It was 18 miles long, and they said this particular cart could sometimes get up to 95 or 100 miles per hour.
You know, I might have paid that $1 as much as I don't like roller coasters.
Safety rules have ruined everything.
And so and then they said they started doing this in the 1880s, I think, sometime, and they said long after the coal mine actually figured out a faster route to get the coal down the mountain, they still kept the actual coaster cart thing open. They actually built like a hotel and a restaurant around the premises, so people would go and just spend a weekend going up and down the mountain and riding this 18-mile thrill ride down the mountain.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now you pay $100 for a 90-second thrill ride.
But enough about my personal life.
Whoa!
We hope you've enjoyed this hour-long thrill ride. It's had its ups and downs, and it's click, 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 clicks up to its starting position, and that
You're
weird time where
stretching
you
it,
wait and
Holbrook.
you're strapped in, and I'm always stretching it, and your nose is itching, but you can't scratch it, and then it takes off, and sometimes it's a road to nowhere.
And you end up right back where you started with a bunch of other people wanting to take your seat.
And my life, probably. I say we do a revenge of the Amusement Park podcast someday.
Agreed.
But for today, I'm Jeff, and I hope you were amused.
I'm Aaron, and I think it's funny that the road to Disney World has more dirty billboards than any other road I've ever driven on.
Oh.
True. Cafe Risque.
And I am Adam, and Jeff, when I build my amusement park, have I got a ride for you?
The Amusement Park Parkalypse.
Ooh. Coaster Parkalypse. That's a good name for it. Coaster
Parkalypse.
A Parkalypse.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to stop.